order. It is 7:05 p.m. Just to start off, I have a few opening comments. Over the past weekend, the school board heard from several parents, both in email and phone call, in support of a specific teacher with an impression that the departure of a teacher would change the programming at our school. The request was to change the FTE of this person with the understanding that it would thereby ensure that the subject taught remains in the school. So it brings up several misunderstandings of the process and board operation. I'd like to focus on the role of the school board. There are many explanations to how our role became so misunderstood and in many respects overly involved. How we got to this point is likely explained differently by every person you speak to. I encourage all of us, board members, to stick with our roles so that over time, everyone learns and knows where to go for what. This is equally important for the community, but especially for board members, like I said. We must try not to overstep the boundaries of our roles, even when we're asked to. So to review, the State Board of Education has a statute that outlines it. It is likewise in our policy manual as policy BBA. So just to kind of review very basically, number one, the school board adopts policies. School administration and staff are responsible for following them. Number two, the board is responsible for ensuring safe facilities and transportation for our students and staff. Or this transportation is for students only. Number three, the board is responsible for setting a budget based on the needs of the school as informed by the school's administration. The budget process includes personnel in terms of approving and budgeting positions, and administration is responsible for spending within those budget lines. And number four, the board, in consultation with the superintendent and administration, is responsible for setting the educational goals, both short-term and long-term for the district. And five, lastly, and not mentioned in policy BBA, the board is responsible for the hiring and evaluation of our superintendent. The superintendent is responsible for the hiring of all our other staff by means of nomination, and the board simply voting to approve the recommended hire. We do have the responsibility to ask questions of the recommendations. With interim leadership, the board has been asked to weigh in on these, but only at the request of the superintendents, and that is plural. Like I said earlier, the lines of responsibility have blurred over the past few years. With interim leadership, they've arguably blurred even more. But our participation in decisions being made is our duty as representatives of the taxpayers that elected us. And as such, I've also handed out to the board members our policy of board member ethics. I've asked you all to sign it, sign the acknowledgement. We must equally commit to be professional in our demeanor and stay within our lanes. And so with that, I open the floor for a public comment. Please limit comments to the pertaining agenda items. If you have it. Let's see. Public comment. Okay. Oh, is there a hand raised? No. Bill, go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Yola. Actually, yeah, one of my comments relates to the points that you just made. So, but there are a couple of thoughts that I was looking to share with you tonight. Foremost is on the topic of the technology staffing. I listened to Tom share the LEA statement last week, and I see the text again on tonight's agenda. The LEA, the teachers and the staff have presented their tech plan and been very clear about their needs since these tech discussions with the board began last fall. They have explained on multiple occasions how the role of the media specialist and integrator is distinct from the role of a tech specialist. And I believe the board is actually overreaching by trying to manage the school's tech plan. As the school board members' ethic policy states, and Yola, you just referred to this, board members, quote, understand that the board as governing body does not manage the district, but rather sets broad goals and standards for the district. So by overreaching, I think the board is preventing the staff from moving forward while the tech needs of students, teachers, and staff, which Tom spoke about last week, are going unmet. We've had 2 talented professionals resign around these issues. And we now know that we have ESSER 3 funding available to help fund this staffing need through at least the end of the academic year. So tonight, I believe that the board should approve an interim staffing solution that provides the school community with the necessary tech support. And Yola, my second point was directly related to the ethics acknowledgement. Last summer, the school board augmented its ethics policy with a school board ethics acknowledgement that is to be signed, as Yola said, by all board members. And as you're now meeting for the second time to address school business, and I know that there's been other meetings as well with superintendent candidates and a principal candidate, I would like to see a confirmation in tonight's minutes that all board members have now signed the ethics acknowledgement. And I will send you, Yola, my statement so that my public comment can be added to tonight's minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Is there any other public comment? All right, so seeing none, LEA or staff comment?
Yes, I just emailed this to all of you. I don't know, Jim and Jonathan, if your school board emails are up and running yet, but no, okay. Well, I don't have a paper copy for you today. All right, thank you. So this is also, please include in the public record. Good evening, my name is Tom Harkins and I'm the co-president of the LEA. I'd like to speak tonight about technology in the school as well as the administration searches, and thank you all for the opportunity. Technology first off, as a reminder, each time there's a technology issue in the school, a teacher or a student submits a tech ticket. As of this afternoon, there were 70 open tech tickets that have not been resolved. On your agenda tonight is the appointment of a tech specialist, as Phil just mentioned, for the remainder of the school year to help bring the new and returning board members up to speed. This position was approved at a salary range of $50,000 to $55,000 at the board meeting on December 14th, 2021. I'd like to thank you on behalf of the teachers for moving forward with hiring for this position. As you know, students will soon be taking part in SAS testing, which is the state testing that's required every year. This requires a lot of technological support, and the new tech specialist will be key to making that testing period a success. Along with getting some of our 70 tech tickets resolved, this position will have a great impact on the learning of students. I just added this part. Tonight's issue with getting the meeting started tonight is a good example of how things can go awry and how a tech specialist would help with keeping track of devices. I'd also like to comment about the technology study committee that you all formed last week. The LEA would like to again encourage the inclusion of members of the staff on the makeup of that committee. There's been a lot of work done by the existing tech committee regarding the technology needs of the school, and we believe that the people that are in the building on a daily basis should be a part of any tech decisions being made. Finally, the LEA would like to thank the board for taking the time to interview the candidates for principal and superintendent. We recognize that those evenings run late, and we appreciate the time the board has spent looking for long-term leadership for our school and district. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak. So that's my statement, but I also have a question about like committee meeting minutes. Are those posted somewhere online? Does anybody know? I was looking for some. I couldn't find them.
They
Yes.
have not, well, I think that some of them are, if you click on committees, it's like in a different way on the website.
Okay.
If you click on the actual committee, it hooks you up into the Google Drive where all the minutes are.
Thank you very much.
So there have not been committee meetings in a while.
And it's the committee chair's job to put it in there. So if the committee chair chooses or forgets, it'll
Okay.
go in there.
All right.
Thank you.
Sure. So moving forward, business requiring action or discussion. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes. I'd like to move this as a slate. That's not the right word. All of them together. Do I have a motion? Green, Glenshaw, and Greenway. To move March 14th, public and non-public, March 21st, public and non-public, March 22nd, public and non-public, and March 23rd, non-public and public, public and whatever. Is there any discussion? All right, so seeing none, All in favor of approving minutes for all 4 of these meetings, say aye.
Aye.
Any abstent or any nays? No. Okay. Next item on the agenda is food service program. And Janet, I don't know if, is Mr. Farrow here? You wouldn't know. Let me look.
Is that the iPhone? There's 2 iPhone or iPhone 2, that's the thing. It just says iPhone, the number 2.
iPhone 2. Is somebody calling in over a phone? Is Mr. Farrow on the phone?
Maybe he's not on.
Maybe he's not on. Well, Janet, if you could introduce us.
Sure, I
What's
can
going on?
give it a start. So, as most of you know, we're contracted into food service this year with Fresh Picks. Our chef resigned very late in the year last year. We were unable to fill his position. So the state gave us a waiver to go out to forego the bidding process and allowed us to enter into a contract with Fresh Picks for this year. We also had a waiver this year because of COVID to enter into the the seamless summer option. Normally, we're in the National School Lunch Program, which gives us only a certain amount of money in reimbursement from the state and the federal government for each meal that we serve to students. Excuse me. So right now have this waiver for the seamless summer option, so we're receiving a lot more money than normal as reimbursement from the federal government. So they did, the DOE sent out a message this afternoon. There was hopes that the seamless summer option would be continued going into the future. Those hopes are officially dashed. The answer is no. We'll have to go back into the National School Lunch Program next year if we continue to move on. I think a lot of people in the state were hoping that they would continue that program because it made it a lot easier for kids. So right now, we are in a situation where we need to go out to bid for next year. And we need to do the RFP process. As part of the National School Lunch Program, our RFP and all its documents, including the contracts, et cetera, must be pre-reviewed and pre-approved by the DOE. I have not started that process yet, and part of the reason for that is in the Finance Committee this year, because of the budgetary considerations for next year, there was talk and discussion, and I think the board talked about it a little bit, about pulling out of the National School Lunch. And Chris Farrell was going to be here tonight from Fresh Picks to talk about a little bit about the difference in what the food would look like and how the operation works, because it does make a difference on their end as far as a contracted service. They're allowed to offer a completely different menu than what National School Lunch Program allows. Because there are big constraints. You have to have so many grains of flour in each thing for a certain age child. So actually, I'm just trying to explain it a little bit for people who have never heard of it before. So Hanover School District is not part of National School Lunch Program. Most schools are. We receive approximately $10,000 to $11,000 in reimbursement from the federal government and another $1,100 in reimbursement from the state. That's on a typical year for the number of lunches that we serve. So I'm sorry that Chris isn't here. I did meet with Bill Van Zandt and Chris Cantwell. They were also from Fresh Picks on February 22nd. And one of the things that had come up, and maybe Elizabeth might want to speak to it a little bit about what was talked about in the Finance Committee as far as moving forward. But there were some thoughts about maybe doing a grab and go menu, which is something that Crossroads offers. And Crossroads actually gets their lunches from Hanover, which is also done by Fresh Picks. So as I was speaking to the representatives from Fresh Picks, they said that they were not interested in entering into any kind of a grab and go menu with Lyme, because Hanover would be the main unit, and the transportation of food in its final form is never a good idea. And when it reaches its final destination, it's usually not in the same condition it was when it left where it was coming from to begin with. So basically,
So are you saying that just to understand that there's not a grab and go
option, they aren't interested in entering a grab and go contract. So basically, at this point, what we're trying to figure out, or what I'd love for you guys to be able to talk about, is whether you want to remain in National School Lunch Program or not. And because it makes a difference as far as the RFP process and what I send out. It's going to make a huge difference. Chris did send me, he was going to try to put together something in writing for you guys to look at. He did give me some notes. He said that he wasn't able to dig into this issue, but he was hoping to do a financial analysis of the impact going into from non-national school lunch program versus staying in national school lunch program. And he hasn't had time to do it because it can get a little complicated. He said that if I could have demonstrated the financial viability of a non-national school lunch program, you wouldn't need to issue an RFP. But we do. He was saying that as far as Fresh Fix is concerned, they would just move forward with a contract, enter into another contract for next year without doing the RFP process. But as far as our internal policies, anything over $10,000, we have to go out to bid, so we would have to do that anyway. He says the pros of going non-national school lunch program is the program would have more freedom to offer students foods closer to what they eat at home, and it would offer more flexibility in the menu offerings, which would increase participation. It would be easier to purchase local foods. There would be far less administrative burden, and it could be a more financially viable program. The cons, meal prices would most likely need to be higher due to elimination of USDA reimbursement. We also get about $3,000 in commodities from USDA, which is food that they provide for us. And he says approximately 60 cents for every full paid lunch served. The school district would need to devise a plan to support students who would have received meal benefits through USDA. So we would still have to have a methodology of figuring out how to provide free and reduced lunches to students that qualify for that.
We should explain that for all the grants, we still have to have them fill out, the students all have to fill out a need assessment, because we have to have that assessment for all the grants that come in, regardless of whether we have the lunch program functioning or not. So we would still know what portion of our population would need to have a subsidized meal, even if we weren't part of the national program.
So our title funds are based on our free and reduced percentage.
Only around 9%.
Right.
We have 12.
12%.
So basically, I guess that was what we were hoping. I was hoping Chris could give a little presentation, but really is trying to decide what you would like to see for next year. And our budget is out of whack for food service for next year, because we have 2 people or we had an employee, a half-time employee plus a contract, and we rolled it all into the contract now. So it's looking like we'll have about $135,000 in expenditures. And I can't remember. But the revenue side is subjective anyways, because it's all just dependent on sales.
We have to set the price too for the food, right? We didn't set that either.
Right, for lunches next year,
Right.
you mean? Yeah. So we would have to,
Because the prices haven't been increased in how many years?
well, not since I've been here, so yes. It's been 1 month.
So do I have a motion?
Did you do it a few years ago?
Do we have a motion in one way or the other with regards to national school lunch programs? So we can further discuss.
I'll move to enter a NSLP program.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
I'm sorry. that was me. Further discussion.
That's usually me.
So what's the best way for us to understand like comparators, you know, to like quality of food, type of food, and really the cost difference between these two pathways?
Right. It's very hard because we're entering into the unknown. And I think that's gonna be a hard thing to determine. There was some thought at one point of doing both or going out to bid and doing both types of contracts, asking for a national school lunch program contract and a non-national school lunch. That is on both ends of it, as far as us as the people asking, requesting the proposal and the people who are giving you the proposal. The amount of work in doing both of those things is, so we're asking.
So when you talk to the gentleman about the non-national, did he give you any sense of like the range of options from sort of, even though it's not a grab and go, but a simple cold lunch option versus a mixed option, versus, you know, like what were the range of deliverables that you could provide?
So that was what he was going to do for me, and I can still ask him for that, for a menu, a sample menu, what would be different. The other thought process too is to have your wellness committee be very, like, part of that menu creation. So, and getting in, or an impact from, somebody said wellness, and
We don't have the wellness committee anymore.
Well, we do within the
disbanded.
school.
Within the school.
It's required.
but having other people be part of the process and getting input from other stakeholders. This is what to see for food.
Cost of the contract different? Like what will Fresh Picks charge, whether we're part of the program or not?
So the way Fresh Picks does their contract, they sort of give you a framework, and the revenue from other sources is a big piece of that in order for you to try to come at the end of the year and figure out how much it's gonna cost. The contract we have right now is for $118,000. But all the revenue is coming into the school district, which will offset that cost. So right now, I think when I was looking at it the other day, we have a transfer into food service of $20,000 that's budgeted. And right now, we're looking at a deficit of about 17,000, but we haven't received all our money yet from the state. So we're on track of staying within our budget at this point.
For this year, but next year, so, right,
Right.
I mean, just my opinion is that the food's not particularly very good this year, so if we leave the National School Lunch Program, will the contract be more than, I think you said $135,000, like it seems like the type of food we order will impact the cost, right?
It will, but if you think about it in the terms of the type of food that you order will also increase your lunch sales.
Right.
So you'll have more revenue to offset the cost of that food. One
But
of
in
the-
like in a typical year, like if you think back to, I guess 2018 might be maybe, fiscal year 19. Was that the year of the school shutdown? Whatever the most recent year that had nothing to do with COVID, that was normal.
Yeah, I
And
think it
we
was
had, we had Paul, right?
Yeah.
Cooking. Did we cover the food cost, or what was the deficit when we provided what was, like, I think perceived as high quality food that kids had the choice to purchase or not?
So I think our deficit was within our budgeted amount. It was very close to 20,000. It might have been 21, but it was what we were anticipating to run as a deficit. It wasn't a shocking impact. COVID created a shocking.
And that was his first year, right? Because we were, I seem to recall we were on track for better numbers the following year, once people realized
And then we
what they
shut
were
down,
getting.
right, and then his second year, we ended up going into COVID and it completely threw food service.
Oh, here he's coming in, Mr. Farrell.
Put him right on.
Yeah, it seems, I guess just overall, it seems like our food costs might go up,
Yeah.
but we'll also probably increase the lunch cost, which I think is relatively low now. And really, what we stand to lose, what we know we'll lose is only $12,100, right? Because that's what we would have gotten in a typical year, the
From
reimbursement
revenue
for
streams.
those families that would have qualified. We'll still be providing that benefit for them, we just won't
It's a
get the
little
money
more.
back from the state and federal
Yeah,
government.
so we won't get the money back from the state and federal government for what we have sold, so that they give us a certain amount of money for every single lunch we sell,
Uh-huh.
being part of that program. And that's what your $10,000 in child nutrition is part of that. And then you get more money from free and reduced lunch. The free lunches, I think, is actually, we get more revenue than what we charge for lunch, for the free lunches.
So, Mr. Farrow, welcome to our board meeting. We were hoping you would join us. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry I'm late. I had the time wrong.
That's all right. We were just talking a little bit about what the difference between a national school lunch program, being on board with it or not on board with it, what would that look like? And if you could share some information.
Could you state again who he is? and his
Chris
title?
Farrow,
It's from Fresh Pits.
from Fresh Picks.
Yep, thank you. And yeah, so I heard you talking about the reimbursement, and that is one of the primary differences. You do get reimbursement for those students who qualify for full meal benefits, but you do also too get a little reimbursement for every meal you serve. Even the ones that you charge students full price for, you do get, I think off the top of my head, this year it's 33 cents for each lunch that you serve, and then another 26 cents worth of foods donated by USDA. So by not participating in the National School Lunch Program, you do lose some of that revenue. The plus side to not participating in National School Lunch Program is you could potentially build participation because you can have the freedom and flexibility to serve what you want. Some people may think that kind of refers to going with more junk food and that kind of stuff, but if you look at the program in Hanover, because our program's in Hanover at the Ray School and at the high school, it's not the case. It's really, it allows more flexibility at Hanover High School. These type of things may not be appropriate for your school, but at Hanover High School, we've done sushi before. You can't do that on the National School Lunch Program. Even things like couscous. One program that we run, National School Lunch Program or not, is a promotion called Nonstop, where we do Indian food. And in the National School Lunch Program, we can't do a traditional naan because it's not whole grain. Likewise too, this next year, they're going a little bit lighter. They're not going back to 100% whole grain. They're going to 80% whole grain. Even something like pasta. I grew up with two Italian grandmothers. I never had whole wheat pasta in my life. I've been to Rome. You don't see whole wheat pasta there anyways. So not participating in National School Lunch Program gives you some of that kind of flexibility where you can do more things that might appeal more to students. On the flip side of that, when it comes to finances for the students, typically the programs that are not doing National School Lunch Program do have a higher per meal price, mostly to offset that little bit of reimbursement that you do get from the government.
Thank you. If I remember correctly, we also have not raised prices in a really long time as well.
It's been since I've been on the board that we have raised them.
Oh, it has, okay.
How much is lunch now?
This is your
Well, today, this year, but like,
How much did it cost?
last year.
I knew you were gonna ask that, and I
Yeah,
couldn't find, I was scrambling trying to find it just before I left, and I don't have it. I think it's like $3.75 per student lunch.
that's
Yeah.
what I
Does
thought.
that sound right? And maybe $4.25 for an adult?
Yeah, I think that's.
Okay.
Does anyone have any other questions?
So
Well, I guess, Chris, what, in terms of the non-national program, what are the ranges of deliverables that we could consider, in trying to keep the pricing within reason? I'm not so concerned about the shift in terms of the reimbursement as much as, we've got to build momentum, build back, participation. So we sort of have a phase year that we need to sort of bring back a more robust program. Are there some it was part of why we looked at the grab and go concept because of how it might be priced out. And I recognize that's not an option, but is there sort of a construct that you've put together maybe for other schools that are, quality food, but maybe not as, not sushi and things like that kind of concept?
Yeah. Yeah, and so, I mean, if you're, and it really depends on what you want to do with it. And the whole, you mentioned grab and go, and that's one of the other things too with the getting off a national school lunch program, you get to have a little more flexibility with is just how those meals are structured. Because you can do more a la carte type items, that kind of stuff with less restriction, easier not on national school lunch program. But in terms of like the meals and the meal prices, if you think of something in terms of, similar to what you've been doing for a program, in terms of the menu, the variety, the offerings, the qualities of the foods, you're really looking at, if you add that 50 to 60 cents that you get from the USDA onto your meal price, you're kind of looking at that equivalent shift. And then really where you want to take the quality with it, once you go off of NSLP, that would kind of dictate the pricing more. So if you want to start doing, a lot more meats from Roby Farms or those kind of things, those are obviously going to have a financial impact, but you'll also have the flexibility to do things differently. So let's say, I think you were saying that we believe the current student meal price is $3.25, did you say?
75.
$3.75. So let's say it goes up to $4.25 going off of National School Lunch Program. You could do your regular meals at $4.25 and do kind of that, average quality, but then you could do, special Roby Farm meals where we're bringing in that local, chicken or beef or whatever, and you could charge a higher price for that particular meal. You've got a lot more flexibility to do those kind of things when you're not on National School Lunch Program. You could do tiered meals where, you've got one meal that's a little bit lower price, a second meal that, may feature, either higher end items like sushi or, those kind of things for a second price. You can it gives you a lot more flexibility to do those kind of things. But just as a standard baseline, to do something comparable to what the program has been with us and before, you're looking at that 50 cents more per meal to cover the money you've been getting from the USDA to maintain the program kind of as it was on national school.
So to do an RFP, which we have to do for any contract over 10,000, what would you need from us to be able to price a program for us to consider? What would, what are the components that you would want from us to be able to provide an RFP?
Sure. So I would honestly say my opinion for your best path forward is to issue an RFP for National School Lunch Program, which is the standard USDA state. You can get a template from the state. But put in it that you are also interested in having proposers provide a proposal for non-SLP program. So that way, really, myself and any other company that bids is going to give you the picture of both types. You can compare side by side. Okay, this is what the program is going to look like if we stay with NSLP. This is what the program is going to look like if we go into a non-NSLP situation with this company. That's probably going to be your best way to do it, to really see everything. If you wanted to do just non-NSLP, then the request for proposals would really just be a description of exactly what you're looking for. You'd want to lay out parameters of, we want to offer this program at a minimum. We want to offer, this quality of lunch, this quality of food, this quality of ingredients, those kind of things. And I would recommend that RFP is left a little bit open-ended because what you'd want to see is myself or FreshPix and any other company not just propose to you what you're looking for non-NSLP, but also include other things that they may be able to do to enhance that program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just putting it in the way he described it, because you had said that doing 2 separate RFPs is a monumental process, but is this a process that would be doable? No, I'm asking.
Trying to get that contract, because we haven't done this. I mean, we did go out to bid, I think in 2019, 18 or 19, when our old chef left and we hired a new chef. We sort of did both processes at the same time. We were hiring a chef and we also went out to bid for contracts. That process of trying to get those contracts and those RFPs ready to go from the state took many weeks of time. Because the state doesn't like this line, they don't like this line, and they have to approve every single piece of it. So it's not just the RFP language, but it's also the contract that you're going to end up with in the end. I went through that process, so it could be that me tweaking what I already had might not be that difficult. I think for me, one of the questions that I want to know, and I don't know if Chris can provide this or not, but what kind of program do they have at the Ray School? Do you have sample menus that you could send us that the Ray School uses? And what is the percentage of school district cost and the percentage of participation of the student body and the adults that eat in that program? Is that possible to put together for us?
Yeah, I'll actually send it to you. I could probably look some of it up right now, but rather than fumble with my computer for a couple of minutes, I'll send some stuff over to you. I can send you sample menus, give you an idea of what that financial picture looks like, the percentage participation rates, that kind of stuff. I can tell you the program does look similar to like a national school lunch program, just with some of those kind of tweaks that we were talking about, a little more flexibility to offer different things, a little bit, different variety of ingredients used. It's not just handcuffed to whole grain, even though they do serve plenty of whole grain, but it's the flexibility of deciding when that's going to be desirable to the students and when, it may be better to do a regular product. Like I can tell you right now, I haven't talked to them in a while, but I would guess that they do regular pasta, not whole wheat pasta. Whereas in our national school lunch program operations next year, we're probably going to have to switch back to whole grain pasta because they're not going back to 100% whole grain, just 80%. But to get that 80%, you've got to do a lot. So.
Still go to Norwich from there. from the high school. They used to do Norwich lunch and transport it. But I mean, does that company do that?
Do you guys do Norwich as well? From the Hanover?
Marion Cross, yes. We actually do from Hanover High School. We do Marion Cross, and we actually do Lyme Community School, which is right down the road from you guys. And that actually could be another opportunity for you guys to make more revenue. Because if we were to partner with you in a non-NSLP program, you could potentially become the production kitchen for that and basically sell those meals to Lyme Community School. We're doing that out of Hanover High School right now. But it could be an opportunity for you guys to take that over.
Is that the nursery school or?
You're talking
Crossroads.
Crossroads?
You're
It's
at
a
Crossroads.
charter school.
Yeah, Crossroads, yeah. okay.
Oh, Crossroads, I'm sorry. You have to forgive me, doing business development, I'm very busy this time of year, so I was thinking of Lyme, Connecticut. One of the schools we're looking at partnering with.
So was the motion to move out of the non-national school lunch program? So if we could just vote on
Ready?
that, then that would give Janet the guidance that she needs to do the RFP.
We ready to call the roll?
If anyone, I just wanted to say that in my experience on the wellness committee for quite a few years and working through a lot of the regulations related to that program, I find it extremely restrictive. And I would almost think that being out of that program ironically could give us the opportunity to produce healthier meals and having the option for varieties without the constraints that are there that are oftentimes behind current data, not being able to serve whole milk or other, it just seems very restrictive being a part of that. And the commodities that are offered oftentimes are not very high quality. And I think if we tap into local resources, we have local meat and dairy all around us and vegetables that would be really nice to support.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, if I could just chime in on that too. Yeah, you're absolutely right. When it comes to, there's a lot of red tape with the National School Lunch Program in general, but when it comes to that nitty gritty, when it comes to the nutrition guidelines included in the National School Lunch Program, that's why I was saying Ray School kind of looks like National School Lunch, but not completely, because there is some stuff, nutritional guidelines in National School Lunch Program, which are very beneficial. There are other things that just don't really work. A great example, you guys don't do breakfast at this point, but the USDA requirements for us to serve a breakfast do not include a meat or meat alternate. There's no protein in a USDA school approved breakfast, which every nutritionist, it blows their mind, but that's the way it is.
And Chris, if we were the production kitchen, do we get any, break in cost because of that? Does Hanover, if you're.
Yes,
Okay, and what?
it wouldn't be so much a break. You would make money off of it. Basically, you would pay us a small, you'd pay us a small fee for the meal and you would sell those meals at a higher price.
I got it, okay.
And if we're not the production kitchen, I just wanted to ask, are we receiving meals that are not very eco-friendly packaging or things like that?
I think he's
I'm
saying
sorry?
like,
Would be out of our kitchen.
Right, if
but
we
it-
weren't though, I'm just checking.
I don't think
because
that's
I
on the
know-
table.
That's not on the table. We don't have a choice for that.
I think we were saying if we were the production kitchen to our school down the street.
Right, I know, but, okay. I just, because when it's coming from elsewhere and all the throwaway things, I know that that's happened at Crossroads before.
I see.
I see.
A lot of.
Yeah.
throwaway.
And actually, all the paper goods we use in Hanover and in that program are actually all compostable. But in general, I mean, you guys wouldn't want a program like we do at Marion Cross or Crossroads, because you're not going to get the quality that you really want and you're really looking for. You know, take your favorite restaurant over the pandemic. If you got takeout from them, maybe it was good, but you know it's not as good as when it was prepared right there and you're eating it right there. There's no food service outlet in the world that can make food for package up and transport that's going to be as good as making it fresh on site.
So are we ready? Oh, go
A
ahead.
quick question. Chris, Frank Perotti, I'm their interim superintendent. And in some of the schools I've worked in where I think you, Fresh Picks, were the providers, we had lower school kids, second, third graders doing gardens outside of the school. And I'm wondering if you're able to integrate the lettuce and produce that they might raise in those gardens into as class projects into your lunch offerings.
Absolutely. We'd love to. We do that in a lot of different schools.
All right, are we ready to call the question? So all in favor of a food service program outside of the National School Lunch Program? Say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Farrow.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I apologize for being late.
Oh, that's all right. Thanks, Department. We appreciate your coming.
Right.
The next item on our agenda, approval of sale of food service equipment. And that's Janet.
Okay. So Paul called me last week. Paul Pellegrino, our chef that was here a couple of years ago, he went to Blue Mountain Union School, and he called because he knew that out in the shed that there is a tabletop salad unit that has 3 units and it sits on a table, and he wanted to know if he could buy it from us. So it's used. He says it's just the unit itself in a sneeze guard, and Doug went out and made sure it was still there. So it is still out there in the shed. And he just wanted to know if Blue Mountain could possibly buy the unit from us. So it's a secondhand unit. We have a big stainless steel salad bar unit that we use now instead of that. I did ask how much it costs new, and it was $300 to $400 new was the cost of it originally. So the question then is being posed to the board if you would be opposed to selling that unit at a secondhand cost to Blue Mountain, so it doesn't go in a landfill somewhere.
Motion.
I'll move it.
Moved by Boylston, second by, oh, sorry. Hayes got it first.
And can you kind of give me an idea of what you'd like to get for it? I don't know how old it is. I don't know when it was purchased originally.
Well, is there any chance we might use this again, or was it really sort of put out there to dispose?
I think it was put out because Paul, when he was here, bought a big stainless steel salad bar, and that's what we were using that first year he was here. So it's a big floor unit on casters that moves around the dining room. So this was the one that we had before that.
Any ideas on how much?
$50. I don't know, it's been in a shed for some number of years.
All right,
We
so
can give it to him.
add that onto the motion for 50.
Will he move it on his own? Because that might be like worth the.
That is actually, could be a part of that.
Yes.
As is.
Should we
Must
check with
pick
the
up.
listserv first? I'm tempted to post it.
So all in favor of selling this piece of equipment for $50 as is, no transportation provided.
Aye.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
All right, next item on the agenda. I'm sorry, Sarah. Can we skip over to Sarah so she can get out? Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, great.
Well,
I didn't, I hit the phone, I'm sorry.
All right, so we'll skip to item E, accepting funds from the LSPA and PTO for Artist in Residence Fund.
I don't know if this is, I think I have to talk to the owl. So, hi, everybody. I'm here as LSPA Chair. I wanted to present the school with the opportunity to accept a donation of $3,700 from our Artist in Residence funds to support this year's Artist in Residence, Alex Cook. He's a visual artist. If you look up youarelovedmurals.com, right now it's just all one word, youarelovedmurals.com. You can see his work. There's tons of pictures on that site of what he's done, so everybody can get a flavor of it, and I can type it into the thing. But my understanding is that this is the way we do it. We say, here's money and please accept it. It's up to you to vote to decide whether to accept it.
I'll move to accept it.
Greenway, and I can Komarni.
I can type that in.
Any further discussion?
Thank you.
Oh, and I can answer any questions.
These would be earmarked for Artist in Residence, so all in favor to accept funds?
I,
Awesome. Well done. Thank you.
There's a copy for you. I sent that to Frank and copied you and also to Jim.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah.
How will the plans for that be communicated to the community? Will there be community involvement? Will there be, what's the, the plan?
Do you mean for the painting itself?
Mhm.
I do not know if there's any plans to, I mean, I don't think community will be involved in the painting. I think the kids are involved in the painting. I suppose I would just toss that off to the Artist in Residence Committee to answer. That's a terrible answer. I'm sorry, Case.
That's okay.
I'm quite sure they have a process, and he's done this many times, and they walk into a school and they just don't set it up. Yeah,
Right.
I think it'll be smooth.
But I think you're asking about, like,
The
to see it.
communication about it.
Oh,
think just
I
like
thought
this
you
is-
meant like after the fact.
Well, that of course too, but I think that like these are the times when I think that the community really can get involved in this school even if it's just to see it and to know that it's going on because it's something new and exciting and it could be, outside or, it's when I think that it could promote community engagement.
I think if the community members that are listening to this meeting right now, if they just went to that website and thought, I want to make sure that I'm interested and I want to get involved, I don't see why they can't email directly Sarah Vargo, PTO@limeschool.org, and say, I want to be involved in this, and then let it go from there. It's the first week of April, first full week of April. And sorry, thank you.
Like this year?
Yes,
Oh,
this is for this
awesome.
year. Yeah,
oh, that's great.
yeah. But I think the Artist in Residence Committee does need new members too. So if I can just plug that as don't forget, this is a choice that parents can get involved and have say. And so please make your choices known.
Thank you, Sarah. So moving back to D, status of the principal and superintendent search. And actually, since Tom and Nikki are both here, I will ask as chairs of the committees if you guys could let us fill everyone in. We are aware of it. So Nikki.
Okay, so we have have brought forth one candidate so far from the original pool of 18. We did receive 18 that were on time within the deadline. The Lyme Superintendent Search Committee has brought forward a superintendent candidate for review for principal. The person meets all the principal qualifications. We feel like that they met the deadline because it was originally in by the deadline, although it was for the superintendent position. They have done the interview. They feel he would be a strong candidate for the principal. So we are moving forward with the committee doing a virtual interview tomorrow. And assuming that goes well, assuming that the superintendent search committee recommendation is solid, Unless something unexpected were to happen, we'll be moving forward on Monday with our second round. So it will be a similar format in that the person will come at 11:15, starting with having lunch with the kindergartners, meeting with middle schoolers, meeting with different people during the day, full staff meeting after school, community, meet and greet. We're still working on 4 or 4:30, so I think we're gonna move to 4:30 just because that was the same time as all the other ones, so just not to mess everybody up. And followed by us meeting with the superintendent, the school board. The school board, and then we would move forward with our top recommendation and second recommendation, but we would be bringing 2 forward with our recommendations.
When do you think that you will be able to meet after that, after Monday, to bring that recommendation?
We are
forward?
fully hoping that the process moves forward for the next board meeting, so that we'll be able to get that information and
April 1st,
recommendations.
Right,
Yes.
we're going with
Yeah, and
April
the
1st
next
deadline,
meeting
like
is-
the superintendent.
Well, that's good to talk, we have to talk about that still, the
So,
next board meeting.
The board, so,
Right, because we can't come up with a date.
The date is a little, yeah.
okay, so we are hoping that whatever we need to do to meet after Monday to be prepared for the next board meeting so that we stay within that original April 1st
Excellent,
timeline.
thank you.
And for the superintendent search, as the board knows, we had 2 candidates here, one on Tuesday and one on Wednesday. It went through a very similar process that Mickey just described with the principals. They had a tour from some middle school students, which they each said was their favorite part of the day. They met with administration and staff members and other people here in the building, Janet, and some other folks. And then they had met with some staff after school, went across the street to the library. I wanted to thank Judy Russell and the PTO for helping get that set up. And met with some community members each day, and then had the interviews with the board as well. Our committee is going to meet tomorrow to finalize our recommendations, so you should have that information by, our meeting's at 10, so by 11 or 12 tomorrow, we'll be able to email you our top recommendation. And also hoping for that April 1st deadline we had spoken about last time, to move forward with a nomination contract.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda, appointment of tech specialist for the remainder of this school year.
So as asked at the last meeting, I did interview the single candidate that was brought, take this down, that was brought forward by the tech committee after they did their interview. I presented a contract proposal to that person, and with the guidelines that I had, and that proposal has been declined. So at this point, we do not have a person or a application for the position. I will talk with you further in a non-public if you'd like at the end of this meeting about that. And then so going to Tom's concerns, there with the 70 open tickets. I did also meet with Marian Gates this afternoon, and she is willing, at least on a partial time basis, to come in and begin to deal with those tickets and get things up to snuff while we figure things out. But so we will have someone into the school to take care of the tickets, keep the teachers working, and there just will not be somebody that's there every day, all day long to, do all those little things. But that's the best we have at the moment. And
Marion's great.
yeah,
She used to work at my company briefly. She's
Bates,
super,
yes, sorry.
super organized and really efficient and
It's
highly
Bates,
knowledgeable.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you.
She also worked in Dresden and she's at Crossroads, so she has significant experience with school districts and could run circles around a network.
Thank you. All right. The 2022-23 calendar. Lisa or Frank, you guys want to write it out for who wants to talk?
Well, I could say that I've looked at it. It's a very standard kind of school year contract. It's been well coordinated as far as I can tell with Hanover, which is your main, and with some consideration with Deptford as well. And you know, from my position and my standpoint and my experience so far in the district, it looks fine to me. So at least.
The other point, I worked with Tom on it too. The other point we kept in was we traditionally start with a 3-day week. So we start on a Wednesday, so we have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we do the 3-day, 4-day, it's a Labor Day, and then a 5-day week, which works well to transition everybody back to school. Any other?
December 22nd.
Oh, December 22nd on there, looks like a normal 22, but it's a 1 o'clock dismissal. So we'd like that to be a D on our key. So that people notice that it's a different type of day.
I'll ask Kristen.
It's 1 hour earlier than regular. 'cause it's a
Yeah.
Thursday.
So it counts as a day as far as the state is concerned.
So do I have a motion to approve the calendar as presented?
So moved.
Greenway, Glenshaw, sorry. Oh.
That's okay.
Any further discussion?
I would say unequivocally, in my 20 years of doing the minutes to the school board, that is by far the record, passing the calendar.
Well, we haven't passed
Well,
it
I have
yet. Well, so now it's open for further discussion. Anyone else have any
I just
questions?
have a question.
Yeah.
So this last day of school, if snow days do not exceed 5, is that different than how we have set it for
It's
the
the
last
same
couple
as
days?
we've done it.
Okay.
And where are the school, like the winter and spring breaks? Are, you said they are in alignment with
Hanover.
Hanover? And then what about the Thetford district? Not so much?
We
or
didn't get
staggered?
Thetford's calendar. Kristen didn't get Thetford's.
She tried to, I
Yeah.
don't think they had passed their calendar.
So we'll send ours to them.
Yeah.
They'll
All right.
line up at Hartford Tech Center. Anybody's associated
Hanover
with high
aligns
schools.
with,
Which Hanover does,
Hartford.
so.
Yeah.
Thetford aligns with Riverbend.
Yeah.
Right.
So typically they're different because there's different snow mountains than Vermont and New Hampshire.
All right, call the vote. All in favor of the calendar as presented? Aye. Awesome. All right. Moving on, NHSBA orientation. I wanted to bring this discussion to all of you. The past couple of years we've had, last year in particular, we had Will Phillips come on 2 occasions to give us an orientation. The year prior, we also had him come for an orientation. I wanted to extend an invitation to him to come to speak to the board. I think all of us we always could use a refresher. There's always new stuff. And include also the administration in that orientation. I just need a consent. I don't need a vote on this. Is everyone okay with that? Can we reach out and try to schedule it? All right. The next thing is Thetford Academy, the Lyme representative. I've been notified by Carl Furstenberg that he would like to step down from his role as a member, as a trustee on the Thetford Academy School Board or Board of Trustees. He is willing to stay on for the rest of the remainder of this year and help ease the next person in. He gave me a couple of names. Basically, you become a school board member on that board. We have not really had him come here and fill us in. He does say that it's nice to know what's going on over there, and there's a lot of resources that one doesn't necessarily know about that are over there. So it might be a nice way to help create a little bit more of a liaison. I have a couple of names that he suggested, and I would like to extend invitations to those people individually. I'm not going to call them out in public at this point. If you guys have ideas, let me know. And I can share with you the names that I have already gotten. I think the former board members. I haven't gotten into Jim and Jonathan yet. Okay, so it's now in the minutes, because I didn't want to ask anybody without that. All right, the next part is the TA bus agreement. Janet, we didn't get a chance to catch up before putting it, or since we putting it on the agenda.
Yeah, so Thetford has reached out to me. And it's Siobhan Lopez, who's the, I believe, the dean of students. Yep, dean of students at the academy. And she is asking, she said that, I guess I could just read this email. But she said she had a conversation with Karine right after Christmas break about busing and how we can work together. And then she said it seems she's not at Lyme anymore. She and I had agreed to look in the spring at whether the afternoon run could make it stop at TA first. Timing wise, it would work fine. So we right now are not providing an afternoon run. This would be in addition. I believe it's the morning that the kids are being driven over to school. We do not have an addendum to our contract with the bus company in regard to these additional miles. They are doing it sort of as a favor to us for this year, and we are invoicing Thetford, and Thetford is paying us the money and we're paying the bus company. That's how this is working so far. She says, we get the kids over there before the bus leaves, but we just use employees that are willing, and it's not easy or consistent. We have to use 2 vehicles most days because of the numbers. So I'd like to take up this conversation again and make a plan for next year. You may remember that the cost per bus is exorbitant, $300 a day for a 7-minute ride, and not totally meeting the need for Lyme students. Who is the best person to start talking with? And then she just says, thanks for any help you can give. So the cost of the bus, I just wanted to point out, is that was at the discretion of the bus company. We had nothing to do with how much the fee was to go back. But it sounds like, so they would like to add an additional afternoon run. I don't know how, I haven't spoken to the bus company whether they're even willing to do that or not. I wanted to ask you guys about it first, and yeah, and I imagine that bus companies, again, probably going to add another $300 a day.
Right.
So,
So I'm just going to address the issue in general. And I don't know what your community standard is and what you want for your community and how much you're willing to spend or whatever, but the law around transportation when you're a choice school is that you have no responsibility to transport beyond 8th grade. If you choose to transport, you can be required, if asked, to transport to all of your schools. I think it's, as I understand the situation, you guys stepped in and helped out in a bad situation. But you're stepping into a big problem, I think, if you continue the relationship that way. I think if Thetford receiving schools make choices about how they want to attract students into their schools, one of the choices they make is to provide transportation. So I've worked in a number of districts that do choice. Heartland, Vermont was probably my first experience. And we had a real contest going on there between the Windsor School District and the Woodstock School District and Hartford. So both Windsor and Woodstock would send buses into the town to a pickup point, and parents would bring their kids in, and they did that to try to encourage and make it easier for kids to attend. Advanced Transit ran a bus up to Hartford on that route, and so kids use that to get to Hartford. That's different in some of my other schools, but if you have a designated high school, or if you were part of an area agreement, in that sense, then you would be transporting to a single district. Croydon, where I also work, We have school choice. Our school of record is Newport, and because we have start choice at grade 5, we are required to transport our 5 through 8 kids to Newport, nowhere else. And they have declined to provide transportation to other districts, with one exception, and that is a drop-off point at the Montessori school, which is on the way to Newport, which is a questionable decision, in my opinion, because it does open them up if someone wanted to really push the point. So that's the situation. You know, what you choose, whatever you want to do, but
Yeah,
just be aware that there are some consequences potentially out
so
there.
further background on this was that we declined doing this at the beginning, and then it was in July, I think, that they reached out because they had too many Lyme students and too few bus drivers to be able to hire somebody to, like, the bus company just couldn't do it. And so this was a request that, like Janet said, that price point of $300 for the trip was set by the bus company, and the agreement was really for them to charge us just because they didn't have time to go through an RFP process for the bus company themselves. And so that's why this has become a bit of a mess. There was concern over the anticipated rebuilding of the bridge that we had talked about. There has been issues with snow days and the notification of our Lyme population that attends Thetford. There is question who is responsible for notifying, you know, it could be debated. Who's responsible in notifying those families? Whose responsibility is it? I think if adding on an afternoon, like you're saying, is just adding on the perception that we're providing transportation.
Right, we would definitely have to talk to the bus company about that because it's gonna put their drivers in a different scenario. Also, there was a sports issue, I believe, when we were talking about this originally, is that they had students that were staying after school for sports, and really in the afternoon, their numbers would be diminished coming back across the river. So was it worth it having a full bus drive that way?
You know, remembering
Yeah.
last year, why aren't we just sort of going back? They should be going out and trying to get their own contract and doing their own.
Yeah.
I mean, this was all wrapped up with a lot of moving parts. We helped bail them out for a year, but that's, to me, it starts to set a precedent if we keep up the same process. I think it's that we should be stepping back and saying, you know, we were happy to help you out this year, but you need to actually go out and develop your own contract and your own relationship outside of the Lyme School, because it does put us in a precarious spot. You know, it's one thing to
It's that
do
perception.
something in an emergency, because it will start to create, that's just my opinion.
I agree. For comparison, can someone speak to how kids get to Hanover in the morning and who pays for that?
A Hanover bus is here. It leaves at 6:55 in the morning
And that is
And that
paid for
takes-
by that,
by
by
Hanover.
SAU
there-
70.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted that confirmed.
And then they come, and they do drive back. I think that was implemented a few years ago in the attempt to decrease how many cars are coming from Lyme because of the parking issues in Hanover. So this was, although I'm not sure that that would make a dent, but that was a
So the point being that
trade-off.
On student business spots.
Right.
Most years.
Yeah.
Till they put it
And you were saying that if we agree to supply transportation to one school, then we are obligated to supply it. So that is also a slippery slope.
It's
Yeah,
very
you
slippery.
don't want to go there.
And we do have the agreement that we have between Thetford and Lyme specifically says that this is like the nature of this and that it's not precedent setting and it's not, you know, but
And there was morning only and all those details were
Right,
in
all the
that
details
agreement.
were
It's
in
only
there.
for the one school year.
So what's our question for tonight?
So they have come forward, asked us to do an additional run, and I just need an official response. I didn't want to respond just off the cuff. I just want to
I
make
think
sure
the
that,
response is that, you know, they need to
right,
Reach out to the bus company.
figure out what they would like to
The
do.
buses
in terms
are
of providing transportation for their students.
They
Yeah,
are usually standing by Post Pond waiting, so they are probably available, but that's not our problem.
so I just want to make, just be clear that there's no intention of providing transportation like in like kind that we're doing this year for next year. Correct? Okay,
Yes. Thank you.
thanks.
All right, manifest signers. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware, because Janet had told me that last year when we voted on having everybody on the board being a manifest signer, I wasn't sure if that carried over time, and apparently since that vote happened, it carries over, so everyone is welcome to go sign a manifest. In general, it usually ends up being the same people, but that's okay. And because there's positives for both elements, right? If you just go in every now and then and you see it, and you kind of learn a lot of information based on just on seeing the spending of the district. I have found it to be very educational, and then the people who go there regularly will see the trends, and so it's a good avenue to open questions and to be aware of what's going on.
It's a really good practice because you learn what the programs are in the school. And because it's like follow the money, right? So if you follow the money, you'll find out what's being valued, what's important, and what's being funded or what needs to be funded.
Right.
So yeah, you can gain a lot of information, and it's a rather than just going and sign them, look through them. I sign off on everything now, right? I don't think you're slipping anything by me.
No.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, so it's been really good for me. I've learned a ton.
Janet, are you ready for the audit?
Then I also just want to say that even if you're not one of the first ones to get there to sign, that school board members are still welcome to look at the manifests.
Go ahead and do them. Thank you.
Anybody else?
It's
Look at, I got an
Vince's-
extra.
It's Vince's, that's why.
Oh, that's why.
I
Should I-
can take it.
Thanks. So I dropped the official findings into the board folder. So it's a letter from Podzik and Sanderson. So basically, they go through significant audit findings, which is pretty fat language. If they have a problem with the overall nature of our accounting practices, this is where they put that information. So really, our findings for the year end up falling on page 2 and about 3/4 of the page down. So Jonathan, are you looking, you don't have a computer?
I have it on my phone.
Oh, do you? Okay,
Yeah.
so it's the letter itself. And it's the second page, 3/4 of the way down in bold. It says school district policies, repeat comment. This is the first finding. So a lot of these findings we've had for several years in a row. So upon review of the school district's various fiscal policies, it was noted that many of them,
where are you? I'm just trying to find it.
page 2, up, down 3/4 of the way.
Okay.
Is it actually in the physical thing too, or not?
No, it's not. It's in the letter. There's a separate letter that they send.
Just listen along. Okay,
So it's in the board folder?
Okay.
No, on the computer.
okay. Open my computer.
Oh,
This is the.
the hour.
Go ahead, you can keep talking now.
It was noted that many of them have not been reviewed or updated in 5 or more years. By not reviewing policies, a serious weakness in the system of internal controls could be occurring and could go undetected. We recommend that the school board work with management to review and update its policies periodically to ensure that they are working properly and are up to date. Food service inventory was a repeat comment. This is something that we've had for quite a while. Actually, Paul was working on trying to abate this issue before he left. While updating our controls over the food service fund, it was noted that there is only one individual monitoring the inventory for the program. With only one individual monitoring the inventory, it could be manipulated or removed from the premises without anyone's knowledge. We recommend that an additional school district employee review the inventory on a monthly basis and periodically perform a count reconciliation of the inventory. So our food service management company will do that for us this year, so it's not an issue. Because they do an inventory of what was here when they walked in and then what they walk out with. Payroll manifest, this is also a repeat comment. For review of internal controls over payroll, we noted that payroll funds are released prior to review and formal approval of manifest by the school board. Payroll manifest should be reviewed and approved by the majority of the school board prior to the disbursement of funds. We recommend that the board review and approve all payroll prior to it being dispersed. This is a comment we have every time we have an audit. There's different schools of thoughts to this. If we waited till board members came and signed the manifest, we would not be able to meet payroll. This is a deadline. It starts on Monday and it has to be done by noon on Wednesday. So, and all of these payroll issues are all contractual, so we have to pay them no matter what. Any hourly employees, it's not a discretionary expenditure by the school board. It's not up to you whether you can't pull somebody's pay. It has to be paid by law. So that's just two different schools of thought. This is always the auditor's standard answer for that. Purchase orders of 24 disbursements examined requiring a purchase order. One instance, or 4.7%, did not have a purchase order to support the purchase made. According to the school district purchasing policy, all purchases other than the food service fund purchases should have a purchase order completed prior to the purchase being made. We recommend that the school board review its purchasing policy and make sure it meets the needs of the school district. Once the policy has been reviewed and updated, it needs to be reviewed with the school district staff to ensure that they understand what is expected of them. So our policy basically says that all purchases have to be approved in advance, and that's where the purchasing POs come from. General information technology controls, this is also a repeat comment. Upon review of internal controls over information technology, it was identified that the school district does not have a policy on information security and that there are no procedures followed to maintain the effectiveness of authentication and access mechanisms, i.e. password length, password history, and lockout or failed attempts. Physical access to file communication servers and other sensitive areas are not restricted to authorized personnel. Best practices would require that policies over the school district's IT system be developed and implemented in order to protect the school district from data breaches and losses. We recommend that the school district review existing policies and create additional formal policies to address information security, authentication, and access, and physical access being limited to file communication servers and other sensitive areas.
So Janet, that policy, there's a bunch of policies attached to the tech plan. Are those drafted to address this issue?
They haven't been brought to
Seen
the
those
board yet.
policies?
We haven't brought them to the board yet.
But that's us.
So I think, yeah, they were on the policy committee had not even seen. some
Right,
of
they
them.
were just
Because we only
hot
got
links
through, like,
in the
D.
plan. So they may be, it may not be a hard thing to
Yeah,
get.
there's a lot of these policies that you guys are gonna start seeing. 'cause
Yeah.
We started
Okay.
work on a lot of them.
I just wanted to check. Thank
Sure.
you, sorry.
Employee reimbursement repeat comment. While testing disbursements, we noted multiple reimbursements to an employee for the purchase of supplies using her personal Amazon account. Reimbursements to employees should not be permitted for general school supplies that are able to be purchased through the school district's Amazon account. We recommend that all supplies and academic materials be purchased through the school district's Amazon account to ensure proper prior approval as dictated by the school district's purchasing policy. Investment policy, repeat comment. For review of the school district's investment policy, it was noted that the policy has not been reviewed and reaffirmed by the school board since 2017. This is one that has to be done annually. So I don't know if there's like some way that we could put it on the agenda for some kind of
Sure.
meeting that's gonna happen every year. We recommend that the school board review and reaffirm their investment policy annually in accordance with state statute RSA 197-23A, paragraph 4, treasurer's duties. Approval of adjusting journal entries. Through review of adjusting journal entries, we found that one entry was not formally reviewed and approved by the superintendent. There is an increased risk that a misstatement could occur in the general ledger when adjustments are not reviewed prior to posting. We recommend that all adjusting journal entries be reviewed and approved by knowledgeable individuals separate from the individual posting the adjustment. So I do all the journal entries. It was me. So I posted revenue to Esser's 1, and it should have gone to Esser's 2. So I immediately changed it and reversed that journal entry and put it into Esser's 2 within like seconds. And they found that I didn't do a formal thing and have the superintendent sign. So that's what I should have done. But I just like fixed it immediately and moved on, and my fault. Capital asset policy. While reviewing the school district policies, we noted the school district does not have a policy related to capital asset maintenance and reporting. This could result in inconsistencies with reporting capital assets on the school district's listing. We recommend that the school district adopt a policy over capital assets that establishes capital asset thresholds and expected useful lives of various types of capital assets. In addition, it should include guidance if the threshold for capitalization includes bulk purchases or the individual cost of items, as well as how capital assets are to be disposed. Grant expenditures. Through testing of grant fund expenditures, we noted that the school district spent $7,224 out of the rural education grant to repair the heat pump in the school's boiler. Rural education grant funds are to be spent in accordance with the following programs: Title I, 2A, 3, 4A, or 4B, 21st century. A repair to the boiler is not in accordance with the noted federal programs. We recommend that going forward, the school district make sure that the expenditures are out of the rural education grant be appropriate based on the above noted title programs. Student activity deposits. In reviewing the deposits in the 7th and 8th grade student activity fund, we noted 2 untimely deposits, which were made 12 and 29 days after receipt by the school. The longer the time between receipt and deposit, the higher the risk of misappropriation or misplacement. We recommend that the funds received be deposited by the school within a week of receipt. So those are our findings for the year.
So I would ask that everybody, well, other than policy, there's not too many of you that have anything on here, but we will be reviewing a lot of policies. And so just repeat, I think that some of it, the Amazon account is paid for by the credit card, and that has been, right? Is that correct?
No, so what happens sometimes is people make purchases on their home account, or they go and buy things with their own credit card and then put in for reimbursement. So they don't like that because it's not a pre-approved purchase. They want purchases to be viewed by the principal or the superintendent.
But the credit card is not on here, which we did fix.
Right.
So that's good. Thank you.
Wait, there's a school credit card now able to be used? No?
Dina's got it.
Oh,
Yeah, it's the same. So if you guys could, I know there are new people that didn't have anything to do with this audit, but if you guys could accept and approve the audit for 2021.
Do I have a motion? Greenway, Glenshaw. Any further discussion? All in favor of accepting it? Awesome.
Thank you.
And then the last item before we go into non-public is approving committee memberships and charges. I actually sent out emails to all the board members individually with suggestions of charges and asking for feedback. I didn't have a chance to sit down and talk to Frank about all of the different memberships on the committees. I can go through some of the charges that I came up with off the top of my head, because I didn't prepare it. So for finance committee, it's going to be the food service, of course, the budget. Potentially looking at the FTE balance. For personnel, it's going to be looking at the evaluation, superintendent evaluation, and also an exit interview, and maybe even pairing up with finance for the FTE part, potentially. High school committee, a few years ago, I believe Jonathan was the one who went to Hanover. They're specifically Hanover gets, when they have a surplus, it all goes back to taxpayers. A significant chunk of that money potentially could be Lyme's tuition. And so that is a question if we wanted
Oh,
to
it even happened
explore
during
that.
COVID. That when the school shut down, didn't they keep,
They keep it every
they
time.
kept everything and
They set our
used-
tuition based on their budget and keep any retainage.
So it's just something to think about and talk about. Facilities, we're working on the 5-year plan with Doug, and there's a lot of, and there's just gonna be a lot in motion there too. Policy, we're just gonna keep plugging away. We've taken a break, we've taken a big break, actually. It's been since Kareem left. So, yeah,
Are we forging ahead, or is the policy committee forging ahead with, knowing, prioritizing our own prioritization? And is there still the thought to work with NHSBA with this?
so we haven't talked about it recently. We are still, I think, on their waiting list because we signed up for it last spring. And the suggestion was going to be that it might happen this summer. We have a list, Will sent us at that point what they use as like their tool for prioritizing, which sets up, just kind of points out which ones are recommended, which ones are required, which ones are optional. And so we do have that structure and we do have our own list. We have not added to it for new requirements, but that's based on how we decided to do it, was kind of to do the ones that are from the 1990s first.
I feel like when we started this, it was the 50s, so like we're probably pretty
So
good.
we're doing better. So pre-19, like 1990s and the required ones. So the one that we did with Mickey, the ACR, AC and ACR was, did we do ICR? I don't know if we finished ACR or not, but that was a big requirement. So kind of getting those main required ones in place is going to be key. But we can talk further because that is another expense if we want NHSBA to prioritize them, or we can do a better. I mean, we haven't sat down to do it again. I think that at this point, because Word Docs is still, they have copies of all of our policies and they're putting them into their system. So for us to change them without having that, like it would make more sense to just change them right in their system rather than having multiple steps. It's already confusing enough, so.
So have you done a contract with them to do the review of your policy or?
Now we're on a waiting
We're
list.
just on our way, on their
We're on
waiting
the
list.
waiting list. It was like a year and a half
A
out.
year and a half.
Yeah, well, we're going to be a big job.
So
That's an
once
understatement.
hiring is done and things settle,
Well,
I will
push through,
take a look at the mandated policies, because
Yeah.
my concern is not so much the dates, but those that are
Yeah.
mandated.
Yeah,
And I'll just take a look at those and then I will talk to the policy committee that's happening to the full board.
and we had Janet definitely also gave us some that are from the financial ones to hopefully check some of these audit
I was
pieces
gonna
off.
say, there's a nice little list from all of it.
Just that alone. So we'll talk about configuration of the committees another time. If that's all right with you.
But like membership.
Maybe after the hiring process, because we don't need enough. So no one's getting additional committee meetings. Unless you really want to.
The wellness committee person might want to jump in with
Yes, absolutely. And
things, so.
so the wellness committee, we had talked about whether that's going to be a board-based committee or a school-based committee at one point. I think we took it off of the board-based committees list. But we can talk about it. You and I will talk about it to start with and then figure out where to go with that.
Wellness committees work very well at school level.
Yeah.
Yeah, wellness committees at a school level work just fine.
All right. So that completes our,
I have one.
Oh,
I got a
public?
letter this afternoon that I just want, I feel like that came to me, but it's really a letter to the board as much as anything. Dear Superintendent Perotti, we are a group of Lyme community members and parents who have been working to recognize Jeff Allen's 15 years of service to the Lyme School with the installation of a lasting tribute on the school playground. This tribute will be a set of boulders that children can sit and climb on during recess and will be engraved with the Lyme School values. The school values fairness, acceptance of others, compassion, responsibility, individuality, courage, perseverance, integrity have helped to create a community of trust where students can thrive. The project was given initial approval last fall from the board and administration pending an insurance evaluation and the selection of an appropriate location on the playground. The respective location of the boulders was later approved by interim superintendent Corinne Cascaden and director of facilities Doug Fillion. The project has met the standards from Primex, the school insurance carrier. This project is community funded and will not impact the school budget. The dedication and ice cream social are scheduled for June 4th, 2022. We welcome you to join us in an effort to ensure that the project can proceed as planned. We wanted to provide you with an opportunity to ask questions. Respectfully, I think there's like 3 pages of things, so a whole bunch of people. And there's the main committee, I'm sure. Anyway, so that's inform you where that is.
So with that, we will conclude our public portion of our meeting. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It is 8:41. Do I have a motion to adjourn public meeting?
Off of that
8:41.
I think you don't want to adjourn your public meeting, don't you want to?
Not adjourn.
Oh,
No, we
Move into
moved to
non-public.
non-public.
Yes, move into non-public. So